We are joined with a champion of martial arts and of business. He has held many titles, for example, as a World Kickboxing Association champion 2009, 2013, and as the middleweight champion, and as a national team member for the WKA. He is a professional kickboxer for Glory Kickboxing, as well as a professional Muay Thai fighter for Lion Fight. He's the founder of Grindstone Athletics, where he passes down the knowledge of champions to his house of students. We are joined today with Chase the Weapon Walden. Thanks for coming on.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I usually kick off most points and most questions with, when you were a kid, what did you want to be?
It's funny that you're asking that question today, because this conversation has actually been coming up in my life a lot recently, for a lot of different reasons. But as a kid, more than anything, what I really wanted to be was an on-screen martial artist.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the first big pivotal moment of thought of like my future and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. I'll never forget the first time that I ever watched Jackie Chan's Rumble in the Bronx. That blew my mind.
Classic.
Yeah, I did not know that human beings were capable of such awesomeness when it came to fighting and even moving like that or anything. I just remember my mind being completely blown away, and I was like, okay, so I want to be a martial artist when I grow up. That's it right there. That was the answer. It was clean cut, clear. But we were also talking about 1993, 1994. So the martial arts scene was a little bit different back then. There was no Ultimate Fighter. MMA was not even really a sport yet. You know, I think maybe the first fight was in 1993 for the first UFC.
Yeah.
So the idea of being a competitive fighter wasn't really the first thing that was in my head. It was being a martial artist, and what was available to us in the 90s were what was on screen. So seeing Rumble in the Bronx really, again, just blew me away. I'd never been so amazed by anything in my entire life. But there were TV shows that were like a fictional Ultimate Fighter, right? So there was a TV show back in the day called WKA Masters, and it was a Saturday morning show. And if you took Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and made it a live action version of the Ultimate Fighter, right? So these martial arts champions from around the world in different styles and disciplines all lived in the same house together and competed in this same arena and tournament. And the goal was to get the Dragon Belt. That's what it was, the ultimate prize. Whoever had the Dragon Belt was the Dragon Belt champion, and you would fight whatever person they put in front of you, and you would take one of the links from their belt and put it on your own. And when you collected all the dragon links, you could then fight the dragon champion. And it was this huge production. And there was scenes and challenges in the show where they would fight ninjas, actual ninjas that would come in the like this Thunderdome whole crazy contraption, and you could see the life bar of each competitor. And every time they would get hit, their life bar would go down and go down. And then when the time came, they would have to fight each other. And it was just this whole fictional show about being a martial artist and being the world's greatest martial artist and all. And I was just like, okay, so that's my life. That's what I'm gonna do. That's who I'm gonna be. I remember seeing those things. And one of the guys that was on that show by the name of Hakeem the Machine Alston was on the movie Mortal Kombat in 1995 or 1996 it came out, I believe. Yeah, it was the OG, the best one. And if you've seen it, or if any of the listeners have seen it or are familiar with it, the very first fight scene that Liu Kang gets into when he first gets to the island of Mortal Kombat is against Hakeem Alston. He's a 6'4", 215-pound black guy, shredded to the fucking T, dreads down to here. And I remember watching them fight, and it was this, the first fight scene that you're really getting involved in the movie. And there's this scene where Hakeem gets like beat and hit or whatever, and his head's down, and then he just whips his dreads straight back, and I was like, that's the coolest guy I've ever seen in my whole life. It was just a badass character and a badass look, and I was like, I don't even care if I'm Jackie Chan or if I'm Bruce Lee or if I'm the head guy. I just want to be in the movies doing martial arts and fighting other people. There is nothing in my life that could sound cooler than that. So that was the original desire to be a martial artist and to be a fighter, was to be an on-screen martial artist. And then just from being involved in martial arts, you get involved in competition and you realize, oh, I can fight guys. Oh, I can fight guys for money? Oh, no way. So it kind of evolved into being a professional fighter. But the first desire was always to be a professional martial artist. And that was the only thing that was really an avenue for martial artists, was to be on the big screen, at least back in the 90s. And as we've seen the sports evolve throughout time, I was exposed to Muay Thai, and I was like, okay, well now this is real fighting and not acting, and this isn't playing, this is being actively involved in a combat sport. And then it was like, oh, well, I'm pretty good. Maybe I can make some money doing this. And then, one thing leads to the next. And, that's where I'm at today as a professional fighter, trying to make my living. But it was always first and foremost about being on the big screen and showing out and inspiring and trying to show off the skills about being the world's greatest martial artist, whatever that means,
I know a lot of martial arts nerds. So like for me, it was Dragon Ball Z.
Sure.
So I wanted to start learning martial arts to throw a Kamehameha.
Yeah.
What was your like special move that you're like, oh yeah, like if I train hard enough, I can do a special move?
If I try my best, it would have to be something off the Street Fighter games. Honestly, I remember, the sonic boom that Guile would throw. Okay. Yeah, or if you want to do the fireball from Ken and Ryu, one of those was always fresh on the mind. I remember being a kid, and we would pretend play fight, and like you would have to be somebody from Street Fighter and I would have to be somebody from Mortal Kombat, and we would have their special moves. You get to throw the freeze ball that Sub-Zero threw, whatever. But there was always that desire for the unreachable. I know there's no way I'm ever gonna throw a ball of ice that's gonna freeze you. There's no way I'm gonna be like Raiden and have lightning go across the room. But maybe, just maybe, if I concentrate hard enough and I really will into existence, I might be able to get a spark out of these fingers,
Right. Now that you're not a kid and that you've mastered your craft, what life advice would you give to that young man that wanted to be an on-screen martial arts actor?
First of all, I don't know who told you that I was no longer a kid, but they're poorly misinformed, okay?
I sit corrected.
A piece of advice I would give to that young man is don't let what other people think deter you from what you're trying to do, right? Not so much that I was deterred from being an on-screen actor and doing these things because of somebody said something to me. It's because I just found a new path that opened up to me because I had these aspirations, right? But the kinds of things that I did let deter me most assuredly affected my athletic career for later on. So I really wanted to be a gymnast, and I really wanted to wrestle when I was younger. But there was no chance in hell that you were gonna catch me in a singlet or a pair of tights. What a fucking moron. What a stupid fucking kid. No way around it, right? I was too worried about getting seen in something tight and people making fun of me because I'm doing gymnastics and that's what girls do and yada, yada, yada. Two of the most athletic people or kinds of people on this earth are gymnasts and wrestlers. What a incredible base to have as a competitive athlete and as a combat athlete, to have the strength of a wrestler or a gymnast. So how stupid do you think I feel as an adult or an alleged adult that I let something like that affect what could have been a much better start for my competitive career? Now, your life takes you where it takes you, and you have to be thankful for that. But if I could go back, those are two things that would have changed without question, that I would have that much better athletic base, which hopefully in turn would have put me on a better, faster path to being a professional athlete. And if not, just a better understanding of how athletics works. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, since you are still a kid, who's to say that you can't do gymnastics? Or obviously, like you're a professional fighter and you've probably wrestled, you've probably done jiu-jitsu, but like, what's to stop you from doing gymnastics? Like
nothing. Ego, a matter of not making the time for it is all that is. I don't really necessarily have that degree of want or desire anymore. But as a kid, you know, I watched the Olympics and I saw the gymnastics or the gymnasts do what they do, and I was like, that's just incredible, you know. And I would like to have been able to do that, especially being an on-screen martial artist who I wanted to be. That's something that could have been a huge aid in that role. If you're going to be on the screen, you got to be able to flip, you got to be able to twist, you got to be able to do all kinds of stuff. So again, it's not a regret by any stretch of imagination, but hindsight being 50-50 or 20-20, it would have been a much better decision to go forward and do those sports that would have put me in a much better position as far as my athletic base or my athletic capabilities, especially for what my wants and desires were at the time. So not necessarily a regret, but there are things you can do differently. That's something I would have chose to do a little bit differently.
It was a question I actually wanted to ask a little later, but to kind of touch on that point, how do you honor your current path? Like the steps you take every day to show up, how do you honor that?
It's no longer a choice. For a long time, it was a choice of like, all right, I'm gonna go to the gym today, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna suck it up. Tonight's gonna suck, tomorrow's gonna suck even more because I'm gonna be sore from getting beat up. But there comes a point in time in every combat athlete's career, especially specific to combat sports, because it's a very unique style of athletics, where you stop giving a shit about that choice because it's been made, right? There's inevitably a point in time in every young fighter's career where they're bitching and they're complaining because that's what we do. And you know, life just sucks sometimes when you're a fighter. There's no way around that. And it took someone telling me this very phrase for me to go, oh shit, maybe I am just being an asshole. Maybe I am just being a complainer, you know? And I've had to say it to my guys, and you can see that switch in their head. And they're like, damn it, I hate it when he's right. And it's a very simple phrase of, no one's making you be here. Nobody. So if you don't want to be here and this is too much and you want to complain about it, go the fuck home.
Have you watched Kingdom?
I have not.
So there's a scene where he's like the gym owner's son, and
Kingdom is the MMA show that came out a couple with what? Yeah, okay. So I have seen some of it. I apologize. Yeah.
So like the former world champ like gets out of prison, and he's back in training after the gym owner's like, come on, bro, like you still got that dog in you, like come on, like come back. And he starts complaining about how like, man, fuck this, like I can't do this anymore. Like I don't even want to be here. But one of his gym mates gives him that prep talk of like, you don't have to be here. You get to do this. This is your privilege. So just show up. And that, I feel like a lot of your fighters and students will probably have that same switch where you're like, the door's right there, man.
Yeah.
Nobody's asking you to be here.
Yeah.
You're showing up voluntarily.
You asked me to be here, as a matter of fact. You know, at some point in time, we all signed up for this. Now, maybe you didn't realize what you were signing up for at that time, but I'm the one here to tell you right now, this is what the fuck you signed up for. So if you don't like it, you can leave. And that's a choice that you have to make individually. And if you choose to stay, you got to choose to stay every day. You only got to choose to leave one time. And that's what makes it difficult.
Yeah. Wow. Another point, your gym has beautiful words written all over the wall. Like you literally have words of inspiration from different speakers, different, I would say artists, different fighters. What was the origins of that?
So my business partner, Tom, it was his idea at first, honestly. He said, hey man, this might be a cool idea because we've all been to gyms before where you sign your name on the wall after you've been there. And then you get to go around the gym and you see like there's a lot of names on this wall. Holy shit. That's Rich Franklin's name. Holy shit. There's been some real champions, whoever it is, you know, you get to see like, man, this same person that you've looked up to on TV, or you at least know who they are, was in here. Maybe they had a good day, maybe they had a bad day, but it doesn't matter what kind of day they had. We both shared days in this environment. And chances are it wasn't that good of a day. So now you feel a little more connected to that person when you see their name on the wall, whether you've met them or not, but you realize that you have a similarity, you have some kind of common ground that you can meet in the middle with that makes you both a little more human, right? There is a reason that in yearbooks, we have senior quotes. And that reason is because that quote is representative of who you are at this extremely pivotal time in your life. And you get to look back and see if you've grown from that person. You read that quote and you realize, oh, what a fucking moron I was to say something so stupid or so good, whatever it may be. You have a reference point of who you were at a point in time, and you're using that quote to represent who that person is, right? Inside these walls, we get to see the rawest form of human beings. We get to see it with all the bullshit down or all the bullshit right up. And now we know exactly who's who, right? We know who's being authentic or who's putting up these guards, and now who's going to let these guards down and who's going to let their real selves shine through. And in those moments, typically, it's not usually somebody just walks in here and says, hey, this place looks good. Let me write a quote on the wall. That quote on the wall typically comes after a really good practice or a really shitty practice. And then that quote is now representative of who they chose to be at that time, whether at their best or at their worst. And it really gives you a lot of insight to who's who and who believes what. Now, it makes it easier for people to express that by using somebody else's words, because those words are a representation of how they really feel. So when you go around this gym and you read these quotes all on the wall, what you're really seeing is an insight to the rawest form of the human being that was in these walls and had that moment at that time. And you get to share that common ground of whether it be joy, whether it be pain, or any kind of sympathy or empathy. You now understand a stranger a little bit better than you never would have if you wouldn't have looked at that wall or come into the gym and had that experience for yourself.
When I was in the military myself, to kind of add to that point, when I was in the military, when I wrestled in high school, when I was training for like competitions in judo, I always felt closer to the people that I was suffering with. And I wholeheartedly agree with that point. And especially since it's quotes that they wrote after a hard day or after a really good day, I think only affirms the point that generally sometimes in suffering, there is like a beauty to it. I'm sure your success would have never been founded if it was just given to you. You would have felt worse about receiving overnight success if you weren't grinding, if your best friend wasn't holding the pads for you when you won the championship. So I wholeheartedly agree. Actually, Coach Adam, and he was my first episode, and I really appreciate that he said yes. He said that he was reading a book called Bounce, and that they were interviewing people from CEOs to champions like yourself to, the world's like mentally strongest people. And the connection they all had was hours and repetition. So in your opinion, for the hours and the repetition that you put in, how did you pull yourself out from the worst day?
So, what's interesting about that question is that the worst thing you've ever experienced is the worst thing you've ever experienced. Whether that's you stubbed your toe in the door on the way out and you might have had not so good of a job interview, to where you got your nose broken in practice and you found out your girl was cheating on you when you go, whatever it is, the lows get low, right? For me, I intrinsically growing up had a very, very bad inferiority complex, extremely bad. So when the time came to make the decision that I was going to be a competitive fighter, it was always about not being inferior, being stronger, being better, and growing as that. And I remember as a young child, the ways that I felt to truly feel being inferior to somebody. And that's an awful, awful feeling. And a promised myself I would never want to feel that way again. If I had any control over my life, if I had any decision that I was going to make, it was never to feel like that again. And on those shitty days, that's exactly how you feel. You feel inferior to your opponent. You feel inferior to your training partners, to your coach, to whoever it is, whoever's beating the shit out of you. You feel as low as you're gonna feel. And again, you have to choose to be here every day. You only have to choose to quit one time, right? And in those moments of those shitty days, I like to tell my fighters, you haven't experienced being a fighter until you've had to walk off the mat, go into the bathroom, cry your eyes out, pull your shit together like you didn't just do what everyone knows you just did, and finish practice up, right? But again, through struggle comes reward. And without those struggles, you won't reap the benefits and rewards of that. So on those times and in those dark days, it's just that promise to myself that I'm not gonna ever be that kid again. I'm never gonna feel that way because I don't need to. Feeling that way is a choice. And what I'm doing here is making myself stronger so I can make the choice to never feel like that again.
It reminds me of a quote I read. I don't remember where it was from, but it was believing in your future to persist in your present. Was your goal always just to become like the champion? Or like, did you have like an external goal, or like maybe even a culmination of different goals?
Yeah. So in 2007, I witnessed a couple events or fights in my life that changed who I was on the inside. As national championships, 2007. There was the amateur show and the tournament during the day, and there was pro fights at night. And I took my first loss that I'd ever taken. I was 6-0 at the time, and I was a stud. I had a couple belts, whatever, just way too full of myself. Let's put it that way. And, I was dating this girl at the time, and, things were going rough, and I was really in love with her. And I wanted her to be there, and she wasn't there. And, I was hoping she would show up, but she didn't. And then I just didn't care about this guy that I was fighting. All I cared about was the outside circumstances. Am I going to win this fight? Is this girl going to see me win this fight? Da, da, da. And then, come halfway through the fight, I look out in the crowd and I see her mom, and I don't see her there, right? She just kind of shakes her head, and I was like, she's not coming. Fuck my life, right? 19, in love, heartbroken, all at the same time, right? So I take my first loss, and that sucked a lot. And the first loss for anybody, whether your first fight, 7th fight, 20th fight, it fucking sucks. It's heart-wrenching, especially when you think you're the man, or you've told yourself you're the man. I've got belts to prove that I am quote unquote the man, and then you lose fights, not because that guy's better than you, because you weren't present in that time. Later on that night, I came back to the venue after leaving and being upset, having a few drinks, what have you. And we wanted to see some of the pro fights, and I will never forget. I honestly, I could do the homework, I could do the research, I could find out who the fighters were, but I kind of prefer they live in infamy in my brain and in my experience. The main event was dark-skinned black guy from Canada, white gloves, silky white Muay Thai shorts, versus this pasty white guy from the Netherlands, longer hair, black gloves, black MMA shorts. Just two polar opposites in every single way. Stylistically, as humans, as fashion, everything was just different about the two guys, right? And after the fight, the medical doctor on hand even said out loud that it would not make medical sense for the Dutch fighter to not have been on some kind of upper or amphetamine. These two dudes fought harder than anybody I had ever seen fight in my entire life. The Canadian guy won and had to be pulled out of the ring by his friends and carried because the winner of the fight couldn't even walk. And these guys were just destroying each other. And at that moment, I remember thinking, I never want to quit this until I can be that badass, until I can do what those guys just did, because what they just did is incredible, right? And then, once you get on that path, you realize in order to do that, you have to put yourself in the most volatile, and dangerous situations, because you don't perform like that at a scrimmage match. You don't perform the same way in the Super Bowl that you do in preseason, because it's not the fucking Super Bowl. So if you want a Super Bowl performance, you better bust your fucking ass to get to the Super Bowl. And then when you get there, motherfucker, what you just did is no longer important, because you now got to be better than what you were. So if I was ever going to fight like that, then I had to start chasing down the big fights. And the big fights came with titles in international tournaments, and then going pro and getting paid and getting in the bigger stadiums. And I'll just never forget that feeling of inferiority that day that I lost. And I was like, fuck that, man. Fuck that. So talk about a culmination of events or trigger points that happened. That first loss, I hated. But what I loved even more is that night that I saw what I could potentially be capable of. Because if those dudes can do it, why can't I? Period. So now we're still kind of chasing the tail of the dragon a little bit, seeing how far I go, how far I can. Maybe that fight wasn't that great. I can go back and watch. I'm like, oh man, those dudes were tough. That was a pretty competitive fight. But at that time in my life, that was the single most incredible thing I'd ever seen. And I don't want it to live in my brain in any other way. You know what I mean?
Again, there's another quote that I just feel like all the stories that you're telling me, I'm like remembering the quotes that I had read. Again, I don't know who it was from.
Does it matter who said it though?
I guess it doesn't. I guess it doesn't, because it's. I mean, to be fair, like it was probably on like the Daily Stoic, like so like stuff that I was reading. But it was, even though it is winter, I find the substance which in my heart lives in eternal summer. I feel like that quote fits that exact moment of that exact time of how you were like, man, I'm kind of weak. I do not want to be this weak anymore. And I hypothesize that maybe that was the anvil of you being the weapon of your moniker. A lot of people, names are important. Otherwise, I would just be calling you hey or you. Yeah, sure. Yeah, hey guy. Like, and would I be right that exact moment was like when Chase the Weapon Walden was like born into existence?
Not quite, because there's another story behind that I'm more than happy to share with you. But I feel like that was one of the defining factors that there's no turning back now. You know what I mean? Like the Joker wasn't always the Joker, but one thing hit and switched and up there, now you're the Joker. There's no going back after that, right? And I feel like once you go through something like that and you see it and you experience it, and there's a choice to be made. Am I going to continue to be this weaker person that doesn't have the strength or the indomitable spirit or whatever it may be to carry on and carry forward? Or am I going to be stronger? Am I going to forge that indomitable spirit? Am I going to put this and accept it as a part of who I am and who I'm becoming? Because once you make that choice, if you dare ever try to go back, there's nothing but guilt and despair and sadness that comes with that, period, right? Because we as human beings have the need for a perpetual forward movement. Being stagnant is the worst thing you could ever do. And if you're going to be stagnant of here's who I want to be, but here's who I keep allowing myself to be, well, you're no longer either one of those. You're something worse. You're just some gray guy in the middle who's not doing anything, you know? And that there's nothing more sad than a 42-year-old lives in his parents' basement. You know what I mean? Do you want to be stuck there doing that for the rest of your fucking life? No, you don't. You're going to make a choice. And either make a choice and you be better, make a choice, fail and be even better from that, or you just continue to not make choices. And the only choice you make is to divert your attention and energy to something else. And then guess what? You will get to a point in that something else where you have to make a decision. And now that you've set a pattern for yourself, you're going to make a decision that isn't forward. It's just linear. If I'm going side to side, left and right, I can never go forward. I'm going to go left and right, I'm going to go backwards. Either way, where you're at fucking sucks. and I don't want to ever be there, you know? But that moment was definitely, here's my choice. You've seen what you want. You've made a decision on what your desires are. Are you going to pursue those desires? Yes or no? And it's really that simple, that black and white. You know, you can make a million other reasons how you can make it complicated, but you're making it complicated. It intrinsically in itself is not. Here's what you want. Here's what you don't want. Which way would you like to go? You know what I'm saying? But to backtrack on that moment that the weapon was born, quote unquote. Long story short, it was actually, funnily enough, it was my 6th fight. It was the fight before my big loss. I was at that time 5-0, had at least one belt, one or two belts, thinking I was a badass. And I signed up for a smoker fight of all things, not even like a real deal fight. This was a smoker, supposed to be more of a scrimmage more than anything. And I went into this fight, and we had just kind of found out that the name itself, Chase the Weapon Walden, sounds real fucking cool, right? So you can't really just say, this is who I am. You got to like prove it. You know what I mean? So you're going to go out there, you got to go be the weapon, right? So I go into this fight, and very first thing that happens round 1 is this guy just starts kicking the shit out of me. Hitting me like I'd never been hit before in my life. And I'm talking floppy arms, falling back in the corner, the works, just getting wrecked. Came back to the corner, and I was like, somebody fucking tell me what to do, because this has never happened before, and I'm scared. Please help, you know? So round 2 came up to round 2, and I started fighting back a little more and not being so, like, I had to do something, right? And there came this time where I kicked this dude square in the teeth. Square in the fucking mouth. And that slowed him down. And it was very noticeable that he slowed down. I was like, oh, okay. So I go back to the corner, and my corner man is just losing his mind. You hurt him. You fucking hurt him. Now you go in and you kill. Just giving out. Oh, yes, sir. You're just full of adrenaline, full of emotions, and not knowing what to do. But again, I had never been tested like that before. And come round 3, probably halfway through the first 45 seconds of the round, I hit him big head kick. Awesome. Place just erupts. Real small, and just going fucking crazy. And I'm just feeding off the energy and feeding off the vibration in the room. And then whatever else hits him again, other leg, right to the face, and everyone's just losing their mind. I'm like, dude, you are 2 seconds away from putting this guy out. Holy shit, you know? And I'm for one of the first times in my life, I've got this adrenaline high of like, here it is. That you are living in a moment. Don't lose this moment, you know? And like a fucking cartoon, man, the guy goes in for a big left hook, and right in the middle of the hook, just push kick right to the face, knocks him out cold, literally does a full 360 before he hits the ground. And that was it. That was the moment. Set, secured, signed, delivered. The weapon was born. That's who I was from that point on. Like, I've even said it in other interviews and other things, is that when I'm buried, I don't want Nicholas Chase Walden on my grave. That's the name I was given. The name that I earned was Chase the Weapon Walden. And that's what I want on my grave when I die. Period.
That's tough, man. That's tough. That's some Viking stuff. I love it. I love it.
Glad you enjoy it.
So then how did you go from a sharp weapon to that loss? How did you reforge the blade that you are? Was it just done through repetition? Was it? Yeah,
repetition, trying to get my life together outside of that, and realizing that, like, on that day, I wasn't fighting for me. I was fighting to impress a girl. Maybe she'll fall deeper in love with me if she's going to beat up another guy. You know, maybe I can keep her for a little bit longer if she sees that I'm a badass, and all this neglect that I'm giving her and not giving a shit what she does on the weeknights because I'm out training and you're not fucking important enough. Maybe she'll see why I've made these decisions, you know? And I just, a lot of self-reflection and realizing that fighting for others isn't what it's about, right? Fighting for me is what it's about. And that's one of the beauties of fighting, is when you start realizing that why it's so important to do for yourself and not to do for others. Human beings have four very basic needs: to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, and to be loved. And that these all lead into the next, which is to be loved, right? If you are seen, it's better to, or it is easier to understand what this person's all about, right? You get to be seen in our best moments. You see somebody game-winning touch in the Super Bowl. You see that. You get, oh my God, look what they just did under all this pressure. That's so amazing. What a tough person they have to be able to pull that out, right? You see somebody get bases loaded, home run, grand slam, the fucking game 9, right? Oh my gosh, you get to see them do these things, right? You hear somebody, like singers, right? As I love like America's Got Talent and all these things where these nobodies get to come out of nowhere. And not only does the whole world get to see them, but they get to hear them and get to hear the power in their voice. That power in your voice comes from somewhere deep inside, right? It's not just a vocal muscle thing. Fuck that. That's wrong. I don't believe that. It comes from deep in here. The power of your voice comes from inside of you, not from the muscles. It comes from what's in your soul, right? So when you're fighting, people get to see you. They get to hear your story. Then they get to understand who you are. If they understand who you are, it's very much easier to fall in love with the person that you are. So once I found out that I didn't need to be fighting for this girl that I was in love with or fighting for the approval of others, then I could fight for myself so people could see who I was. And once they saw who I was, they'd ask questions, like right now. And they get to hear what I'm all about. And finally, when they hear and see what I'm all about, they understand me more. And hopefully that transfers into love.
Great middle place to spread it. So where can people find you on social media, your website?
They can find me on just the majors right now. Just do social media as far as Instagram and Facebook. Not big on TikTok or Twitter and all of that. There's a limit to social media in my opinion, but you can check me out on Facebook. My name, Chase Walden, Chase the Weapon Walden on Instagram, but all means you can also check us out at Grindstone Athletics for Instagram and Facebook. You can check our website out at grindstoneathleticsvb.com. Again, that's www.grindstoneathleticsvb.com, where there's a link to all the other social media profiles or anything that you.
To pivot from your fighting, I would also like to ask questions about your business. So what sacrifices did you have to make to become a business owner? And did you feel like an imposter syndrome when you moved in from the fighting world to the business world?
So the imposter syndrome never really happened in business, but it's always happened in fighting. Always. It's a very, very weird dynamic when you see yourself as one thing, but then if you remove yourself from that and you see the things you've accomplished, like, well, I've accomplished these things, I've done these things, so why do I feel this way? Which is a very, very odd thing. That's something that a lot of fighters actually struggle with, is that imposter syndrome. It is very common to see, but I didn't really experience that with business. I had a long history of teaching martial arts. I started teaching martial arts at 15 or 16 years old. Just helping out, teaching Taekwondo classes, and then discovering Muay Thai, doing that, and then the natural progression starts again. You start assisting classes, start teaching classes, leading programs, so on and so forth. So finally, it got to the point for me that when it came time to open a business, it was like, okay, well, I fucking know business. It's not a real hard thing to do. It's just a lot of work that's involved with that, right? But the imposter syndrome never really set in as far as being a business owner, because I knew what I believed in, and I knew what I was offering, and what we are offering here at Grindstone Athletics is extremely authentic and comes from a place of experience and is rooted in nothing but love. Now, the road to that love can be bumpy, right? We pride ourselves in being very straightforward, very hard on our students, but that's because no one's going to be harder on you than life, right? And if we're not hard enough on you here, or at least just you get the face value of what we're saying here, is I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm going to tell you exactly what the problem is, what your problems are, what the problems that I see are, and then a list of how to solve all those problems so we can continue to prosper and get better, right? That's what it's all about, is improving ourselves better than we were yesterday, or that 1% that I really don't like that saying very much because it's overused, but it's true. At a minimum, you should be aiming to get 1% better than you were yesterday. Your next fight should be a little bit better than your last fight. If not, this part of the performance in your fight should be whatever it is. That little bit of detail needs to be better than it was before. Because like we talked about, if you're not progressing, then you're only going to move linear. Once these options run out, then you're only going to go backwards, right? So if you're not moving forward and you're not progressing, then what I'm offering you isn't a quality product. And that's kind of the fail safe or self-check, I should say, that are my people prospering? If my people are increasing what they're doing as far as the challenges they're accepting and the accomplishments they have, then obviously what I have to offer here is a quality product.
You are a fighter and a business owner, but you also ref a lot of fights. And to me, at least, it seems that you're as comfy fighting as you are doing everything else. If you had to choose between being a fighter and being a business owner, what would you choose?
Right now?
Yeah. Because we live in seasons, in this current season.
Sure. So right now, that's a difficult question to answer because I'm pretty much not at that point, but pretty soon I'll be at that point where it's going to have to be fighter or business owner. That's because I'm 36 years old. Got a good couple years left in the game, but after that, it's going to have to be a choice. You can't fight forever, so you kind of ride that out until you become just the business owner. So it's really what my overall grand scheme is to never have to make that decision, is to ride it out until I don't have the option to be one anymore, so I have to be the other. I will say though, hindsight being 2020, there are some things I could have gone back and done a little bit differently to been more of a active professional fighter at a younger age than I was. But again, the goal is to never have to make that choice, is to be able to, ride this thing till the wheels fall off. Fortunately, at the point in time that I came into competitive fighting, the age range of professional athletes has increased exponentially. Back in the day, if you were 28, you were old. You were old to be fighting. Now guys are fighting until they're 45. And they're like, all right, well, that was a good run. Yeah, it's a pretty fucking good run if you're going to retire at 45. I guarantee you I'll be in this game at least until I'm 40, and that's another 4 years. So at that point in time is when I decide to kind of make that decision of like, all right, did we knock enough things off the bucket list? Did we get enough done? How do we feel now? And how we're going to feel in 5 years from now when we look back at the choice we're making today, And that's a weird spot to be. A lot of guys consciously make that decision. Like, all right, man, I'm fucking 27 and I'm done. I'm out of it. I'm going to go do this. Well, I'm not out of it because I don't have to be. I'm still very physically able, willing, and capable to fight. It does get difficult being both the business owner, the coach, the ref, and the fighter. That gets exhausting. But you have to consistently remind yourself that one of those is going away much sooner than the other three are. And that's not by choice, that's by necessity. I don't have a choice in that one. That option is going to be taken from me at some point in time. So I plan on taking full advantage of it for as long as I can before somebody else chooses to take that from me.
Is that the reasoning you use when you balance all of them? Because you balance a lot.
There's a handful of things for sure. The choice to balance all of them is to, once again, encompass as much professionalism and as many facets that I can. There are a lot of guys who just fight, a lot of guys who just coach. I know guys that just referee and judge. They never fought at any time in their life, right? But they just love being involved in the sport. I like being all of those things because now, without question, or with very small question, is anyone able to say that guy Chase doesn't know what he's talking about? I fight, I officiate, and I coach. So there are four different avenues that are involved with this sport: fighting, coaching, officiating, and spectating. And I have my feet very deeply ground in to all 4 of those aspects, because that gives me a different view of what's going on in the community, outside of the community, and all around the community at all given times. So I know who the players are, I know where they're being played at, I know what the big events are, and I know what's being involved in those events on the inside, on the outside, on the professional side. So by doing all 4 of these things and being involved in all 4 different ways, I personally like to believe that I have got one of the best insights of what goes on in this sport and in this business on the overall side of things, not just from one small vantage point.
As a fighter and as a coach, has there been a time where you were able to give like your students tips of like, you should do this or you should not do this? For like let's say for like a scorecard or for any like point making. I'm personally not familiar with the I think it's like the international league for because I know that Muay Thai is becoming an Olympic sport.
Yes.
Has there been a time where you're like, you guys need to train a specific way for this specific fight or for this specific tournament?
Oh yeah. That's I think it was one of the most interesting aspects of tournament fighting when it comes to amateurs, right? So depending on what tournament you're fighting in, who the sanctioning body is, and more importantly, what country it's in, that is going to dictate how you need to fight. So when you go to world championships every year, the officials and the referees and the judges, they all volunteer, right? They pay money to be there. So the rules differentiate from country to country, right? So Glory Kickboxing, right? Glory is a rule set, not just an organization, right? Whatever kickboxing, there's actual technical term to it that slips my mind right now. We'll just call it Glory for the sake of the conversation. When I was in Wales about a year ago for World Championships, officiating, reffing, judging, one of my jobs there, as somebody who has a clear speaking voice, was to thoroughly explain to the other judges that we are under unified kickboxing rules. There it is. And what that meant is that we are under the American rule set. So there was this German official who went by the name of G, very cool dude, very experienced, probably like 75 pro fights or something like that. Yeah, dude's a stud. And I had to explain to him that this rule in America was slightly different than it was in Germany. And because we are going by the unified rules that we use in America, then we have to do that for everybody everywhere. So the way you're used to doing this isn't correct in the format of which we're doing it here at this tournament. So I need you to do this XYZ as opposed to ZYX. Does that make sense? But furthermore, I remember the first time I fought internationally in Scotland in 2010. That was a huge learning curve for me as a fighter. Huge, because all the coaches on the team were like, all right, we got guys from Ireland, Scotland, and England that are judging these fights over here. And they're judging based off of body movement, not off of damage. We were like, what does that mean? They're like, you can hit them all day long, but it's not scoring well in those rings. But we've noticed when you hit them and you're actually moving them and deterring their balance, they're scoring really, really big on that. And that's a European aspect that they focus on when scoring fights. So we have to tell our guys, kick higher up on the shoulders and disrupt their balance as opposed to hitting their body and making them buckle over. That's going to score higher points for you. And we started doing that, and we started winning fights. You know, you have to watch that. Maybe you've got one of those judges who thinks that the only way to fight Muay Thai is the exact same way they do in Thailand. So what are you going to do there? Fight a little more Thai style, right? So you have to kind of curtail your performance to who's judging that performance or where geographically you're located in the world at that point in time. So there's definitely times where we had to do that. There's been a million times as an official where we train other officials around the world, around the country. I just got back this past weekend from Washington State, helping train a lot of officials because it's kind of the Wild West out there. They don't really have any organization or sanctioning bodies. We have to say, hey man, you're going to shadow judge me today. Tell me what you scored. Cool. Tell me why you scored that way. Great. Let me tell you what I did. And it'd be the exact opposite of what they're looking at. And that comes down to, what was I looking at as far as criteria, and what were you seeing as far as a fight? Does that make sense? So there's been a lot of that on both the officiating and the coaching side of, hey man, this would be the proper way to go through this list. Here's number 1, here's number 2, here's number 3, here's number 4. Those are the degrees of effectiveness that we're gonna curtail to. But then on the coaching side, you're like, all right, man, this motherfucker over here is from Egypt. You know what they like in Egypt? They like spinny, flashy stuff, whatever it may be. And you have to kind of curtail to that.
Prince Nassim style.
Yeah, dude, Prince Nassim was definitely an underrated guy. He might have been an asshole, but that dude could fight. I loved his fighting style.
Yeah.
Was he an arrogant prick? Yeah, fuck that guy. But damn, could he fight. He was truly special in that aspect.
Very flashy.
Yeah.
Almost dancing. Oh, I mean, it was dancing.
Absolutely dancing. Yeah. But we've never seen someone to quote unquote dance and fight and win. You see guys do a little bit of that and they might show off, shuffle their feet, throw a heavy jab, whatever it is. But that guy actively beat the shit out of you while actively busting a move.
Yeah.
And that's special. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. I like, I'm hesitant to ask. But like, because of your time.
No, now you're gonna ask.
Yeah, I should. Do you need to go to Thailand to be a successful Muay Thai fighter?
Nah, man. This is a touchy subject for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I now understand your hesitation. I think it's extremely important for anybody who's serious about the sport to go to Thailand, but to understand where you come from. To understand the roots. I would dare say anybody who's this serious about it should also go to the Netherlands and understand what kickboxing is. And Dutch Muay Thai, that's a different animal, completely different animal. But even if it's just for a 2-week stay, right? I don't go for anything less than 6 weeks nowadays. Now, as a business owner, I might have to go for just 2 weeks because getting 6 weeks away to go fight, it's gonna be a fun sell to my business partner, right?
Yeah.
But I've been over there 6 or 7 times now, fought a handful of times. And even nowadays, some of the top trainers in Thailand are saying that Thais are no longer the best at this sport, right? The Thai people are obviously there's a huge debt. My life has been changed because of their sport, right? But as someone who considers themselves somewhat accomplished and has almost 20 years in the sport, I feel very entitled to this opinion, saying that no one needs to go over there because there's no secrets in the sport. Now, when you go over there, you do get exposed to the real life stories of like, yeah, these guys beat the shit out of me 30 minutes of clinch after a 2-hour practice every day for 6 weeks. And that sounds cool. Fucking sucks dick. It's not fun. It's awful. But you won't appreciate it until you've gone through it. You can hear me tell a million stories. They sound cool and you're like, oh, that's awesome. Da, 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 da. But until you've had your ass beat and your shit pushed in for fucking 6 weeks straight, you'll never really understand what someone's talking about. So is it extremely beneficial for someone to go to Thailand and experience the sport in its purest form? Fuck yeah. Why would you not want to do that, right? Do we need to emulate everything they do over there? Do we need to try to be them? Do we need to try our best to fake being Thai? No. And I'll be the first one to tell you that when you're over there, because I was that guy for a long time. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I was that dude for a very long time where I was like that. Yeah, I was that Muay Thai guy, right? Like, that's the way to do it. The way they do it is the only way, da-da-da-da. And then you kind of grow up a little bit and you get over your own infatuation and you realize that there's people all around the world doing this. And now they're starting to evolve to catch up to that evolution, right? The first time I ever went to Lumpini Stadium, the mecca of Muay Thai, I left after 3 fights. It was boring as shit, dude. 3 fights, 5 rounds apiece, 3 minutes on, 2-minute rest. 3 fights took almost 45 minutes and they all looked exactly the same because, especially at that level, like, I'm not saying those guys can't fight, don't get it twisted, but they're fighting a very certain way for money.
Yeah.
It's not about winning these prestigious events, it's about winning money. And then every once in a while you catch a foreigner who comes in there, breaks the mold, doesn't fight like the Thais, and brings in a badass knockout and a total ass whooping. But nobody over there really cares about that because he didn't do it the way the Thais do it. And they're so nationally proud, which is completely understandable. I get it. But the rest of the world is progressing. You guys have been doing the same thing at this level for this long. But the whole time they were doing this up here, the rest of the world was doing this. And guess what? We are about right there where we're the average pro Muay Thai fighter isn't necessarily Thailand good, and they can't necessarily fight Thailand Muay Thai. But if you took any of these guys and put them in a European event, it's a whole nother ballgame at that point in time because they're out of their comfort zone, right? So I think it's super important for any serious practitioner to go check it out, know where you came from, know the history, know why they do the things that they do, because knowing those things will help put you onto a track of knowing why it is you do what you do. And that's more important.
I wanted to ask, I mean, as a champion too, are you more of like a Savat fan or like a Thai fan? Like the way that you personally like training, or like your opinion on it? Like, do you like the Thai style or do you like the Netherlands Dutch style?
I like the hybrid style.
Oh.
And for me, that's the English. No one does it better than they do. The only person to do it better than the English was Danny Bill. He's the greatest Muay Thai fighter of all time, and very, very underappreciated and underknown. But he was an American as well. So if you check guys out like Liam Harrison, is one of the biggest names in the sport thus far.
God, nasty.
Yeah, exactly.
Those kicks.
He's nasty as shit. Dude's an animal. But when he does it, it just looks sexy.
It's just so
It's that beautiful Thai style with that mean Dutch aggression, and it's right in the middle. So you're talking Liam Harrison, you're talking John Haggerty, you're talking Damian Traynor, which, oh my gosh, he's probably one of the best hybrid style fighters of all time.
They're all nasty, man.
Dude, but every time you watch them fight, it is beautiful, gorgeous Muay Thai, but it's so goddamn violent. And you're just like, how can it be so beautiful and so done with such good technique and just such meanness to it, right? You watch Danny Bill, the greatest technical fighter, the highest IQ of all fighters to do Muay Thai ever in existence. Just a thing of beauty. There is no way, nowhere, nothing that could happen in that ring where he couldn't sweep you from the outside on command, right? And anything you did, he could take your bottom foot right up underneath you, make you flip, go backwards 4 times over if you wanted to. Just a pure savant of savagery, you know, and there's just no other way to explain it. But I grew up loving the Thai style, and I wanted to be that elite Muay Thai guy. You know what I mean? I wanted to fight every fight, 5 rounds, full rules, but fuck, damn the man, this is what it's done. But then you can't deny the savagery of the Dutch. Now, that's what I didn't like about them, is that there seemed to be so much more of the kickboxing aspect. Again, professional kickboxer, I get it, but it just seemed like you could get through a kickboxing match just by being tough as fuck. And you can get through any fight like that. But at the professional level of Muay Thai, you couldn't just be tough. You had to be as smart and as good as you were tough. And that's something that really made the defining factor of me of pursuing Muay Thai, is that there was no just being tough. If you were a professional Muay Thai fighter, then you have to be good. There is no question about it. No way. And if you weren't, it was very obvious that you weren't quite a professional, right? Yeah. I love giving the analogy that, this guy served, and you're in the military, so I hope you understand this. You could serve in the military, right? You do your 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever, you get out. Great. Thank you for your service, sir. Very nice of you. You say, I was an NCO at this rate, did this job, whatever. But then you meet this guy over here. You're like, I got 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan, 2 to Somalia.
Yep.
You look at that guy and you go, that dude's a fucking soldier.
He's a BAMF.
Straight up, right? And it was very obvious to me at an early age in my career that pro Muay Thai fighters were seeing the exact same. Oh, you pro Muay Thai. Hats off to you, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a pro MMA fighter? That's cool. Oh, pro kickboxing? That's cool. But in this society, in the striking circles, everyone understood that was a different level of intelligence, a different level of integrity, a different level of sportsmanship that came with being a professional Muay Thai fighter, right? Would you rather be a pro checkers player or a pro chess player? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kids play checkers. Thinking men play chess.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%.
So that's always how I viewed it, is the separation of styles, where there's nothing against kickboxers. I love Glory. I hope you guys have me back sometime. Throw that one out there. But there was just nothing more satisfying than not just being brutally tough, but being brutally fucking good and precise at the same time. And to me, there's no topping that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're reaching the closing time because my assistant was saying that we're reaching the time limit. But what advice would you give to the young men and the young women who want to fight or start a business?
So both of those things carry a lot of the same challenges, right? Of being a fighter and being an entrepreneur. And I think that the two most important things, which go hand in hand, to tell anybody who wants to pursue being a professional fighter or an entrepreneur, is that one of the most important things that you can do is listen to your elders, or those who just have more skin in the game or more experience in the game, whether they're older than you, younger than you. If there's somebody who's been doing this longer than you absolutely need to listen to what they say and really evaluate some of your decisions based off their advice, because they've made the decisions that they've already made the decisions that you're thinking about trying to make. On that same token, fuck what they think. Just because it did or didn't work for them doesn't mean that it won't or will work for you. And there's a saying that I have that applies true to fighting and to business. And this is what differentiates successful people from non-successful people, in my opinion. Take that advice, take it in deep. You need to understand that this person knows more than you, and that's okay. But if you believe that this is a decision that you have to make, then fuck what they think, because that's not important. When the time comes that you cannot find a way, you must then forge a way. And that's the difference between success and failure. Those who say, I can't find a way, they go off, they do something else, they make a linear movement, or they go backwards. Those who make a decision that they're going to forge a way are the ones who reap the rewards and the benefits from going through those struggles.
Powerful. Extremely choice words. Do you have any closing thoughts? Any closing questions?
No, I'm upset that we're running out of time. I'd like to do this another hour or two.
Honestly, yeah. When we upgrade the gear, I think the long form content of 2-3 hours, I'd love to be able to model that formula.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I'd be more than happy to be back on.
It'd be great to have you. But thank you so much for your time. And everybody, this is Chase, the Weapon Walden.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, brother.
Of course.
Cut.